Native Bidaské, Native News Online's weekly spotlight on those making news and leading change in Indian country. Today, we have a very special guest with us today, Wahleah Johns, who works at the U.S. Department of Energy. She is the director of the Office of Indian Energy Policy and Programs at the U.S. Department. And Wahleah, welcome to Native News Online's Native Bidaské. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Yes, and thank you for coming on today. Tell us a little bit about your position there at the U.S. Department of Energy.
Sure. I was appointed from the Biden administration to serve as the director of the Office of Indian Energy Policy and Programs in January of 2021. So day one, I've been a part of this great team. Our office helps to support tribes carry out their energy vision, and we offer financial assistance, grant opportunities for energy projects, and we also provide technical assistance and education and workshops on energy. And so from Energy 101 to how to maintain also these kind of clean energy systems. So it's really exciting work here.
And a number of years ago, before you got there, I remember when somebody told me that the Department of Energy was held a conference in Washington, and they expected like 200 people, but 600 Native Americans showed up. There's such high interest in energy. And so I think it's exciting because Indian lands are full of energy, and we know that. And I think it's the responsible leaders who know how to do it in a very responsible way for the environment and on and on. So last week, the White House released what was it called? The Tribal Playbook to help tribal governments understand the infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure law, and kind of tell us how energy fits into that, how the Energy Department fits into the infrastructure law that was $13 billion is allocated to Indian country.
Yeah, you're right. $13 billion identified, set aside for tribal nations to support. This is all from the bipartisan infrastructure law to support infrastructure like water, drinking water access, and then also broadband, energy, and climate resiliency. I mean, these are a few provisions within the bipartisan infrastructure law, and there's many more. And so if you go to the White House, they have a page on the Tribal Playbook, and it's really broken down every funding opportunity available for tribes. And the other piece is that the Department of Energy, out of the bipartisan infrastructure law funds, is going to get $62 billion out the door. And this is really amazing opportunity for tribes and tribal communities to participate in. And our office did not get any bipartisan infrastructure law funds, but we are helping to facilitate and get the information out to tribal leaders and communities about what is in here in regards to energy. And there's, for example, $10 billion that we're going to be going to strengthening our grid resilience, and that there's a formula grant there that's tribes are eligible for. So I'm really excited about continuing to share more information about the bipartisan infrastructure law in regards to energy. And also there's opportunities from our office too, from our annual appropriations to support clean energy infrastructure, community and commercial scale projects, and then also to help electrify homes and tribal buildings that aren't traditionally next to have a grid infrastructure. So those are some of the exciting opportunities.
Well, and I know when I talked to you last week, we talked about the Navajo Nation, that because of, especially during the pandemic, there was a renewed focus on Navajo Nation and some of the disparities with health. But as it relates to running water and lack of electricity, the numbers are pretty substantial. I think was it over 30% don't have electricity, and so. But beyond Navajo Nation, tell us about the state of Indian country. Are there other locations, other reservations that really lack electricity, electrical power?
Yes, that there are. I mean, there are a lot of tribal communities that don't have great energy reliability. So maybe sometimes there are communities that are sort of at the end of the transmission line, and so their power fluctuates, and sometimes they have outages. And I think this is part of, our learning as Department of Energy. We are currently doing a congressional report on energy access and energy reliability. So looking at and hearing from tribal leaders and tribal communities, where are these areas located where tribes are having a hard time being able to power people's homes. And then some of the, critical issues around like transmission access, because we do have a history of, how the foundational transmission kind of plan for this country, sometimes didn't include tribes or tribal jurisdiction or lands. And so what we'd like to do with this report is identify in Indian country, where are these homes at? Where are these tribal buildings at? And how can we best support? And this is really a report for tribes to use to help leverage more resources so they can build the infrastructure out and support these communities. So it's really important. I mean, I think that we're going to have a listening session on July 28th on this energy access and reliability report. And it's for our report, it's due this year. So we are hoping to wrap it up and be able to share by the end of the year with tribes and other entities to, identify like the challenges and barriers to some of.
Well, I'm happy to hear that you're doing that. So needed in Indian country. You have this listening session, and how's that going to be conducted? And if tribal leaders want to engage with it.
So if you go on our website, it's on our main page at Indian Energy, in Department of Energy. So we have the first session that we held was in November of 2021, and how we structured it. And there was, I don't know, there was hundreds of participants that were on the call from from Alaska to the Northwest, Territory region, the Southwest, and all talking about the challenges of the unelectrification in their communities. And the way that we'll format is that we'll go through what we know, and really it's a listening session to hear from tribal leaders and tribal community members of these challenges, and incorporate that into this report, so that we are hearing and firsthand from people throughout Indian country, some of these challenges. So if you know, or if you are without power from a nation, community, please participate, because we'd like to hear the challenges and learn about this, because this is going to help address some of these energy burdens, I guess. And we also refer it to energy poverty, because tribal, it is like the majority, I guess, amount of homes that don't have access to power in the United States are on tribal lands. And I think that's really, I think I see it as an issue we can solve quickly if we are able to pull together federal resources, state resources, tribal resources, everyone, all hands on deck to address this issue. Because power, I think, helps with productivity in general in a household, in a community. And I have visited many homes that don't have access to electricity. And boy, when they are able to have access, they're able to get broadband. They're able to get a refrigerator to refrigerate their foods, to store, healthy foods in their home. And I think children can be able to do homework at night and not have to rely on kerosene, lanterns, or battery charge flashlights or lighting. And those costs add up. We have seen the cost of, people who live in unelectrified homes or buildings paying much more, even with their limited income, for power today. And this is right now is demonstrating that there's a lot of inequity here in the United States, and tribes need to be prioritized. And this is why we're doing this report and addressing this topic.
I am really excited that you're doing this report, because it's so necessary. Because if most people, and I think our viewers understand this, if you don't have electricity, it's like third world living conditions. It's just, and you mentioned the children doing homework. Our native children need to compete with everybody else that are growing up in nice suburbs and everything else, and so when you see them overcoming those obstacles of not having electricity, is even much more significant as far as I'm concerned. And so I'm really happy you're taking that. And I really like what you said. Hopefully it can be done quickly, because we are so, portions of Indian country are behind. And I think any of you who are watching have had electrical storms come through, and your power is out for 3 days, and it's like the end of the world for you. But think about how those who in Indian country have to live with this day after day after day, and the children, and it's just very, very difficult. And you mentioned kerosene lamps, and I'm sure they have candles and those types of things. But this is something I'm really happy you're doing. Hey, I want to kind of shift over to tribal consultation. Now, we understand that the Biden administration has really taken it up a notch. How has the Department of Energy taken up tribal consultation? And certainly the listening sessions would be considered part of that. But can you talk about that a little more?
Absolutely. Since the Biden administration, I think it was within a couple weeks, came out with a memo and encouraging all agencies to strengthen our commitment and policies that or if we don't have a policy on tribal consultation, establish it. And so everyone has been tasked to, look at for DOE, we have a DOE order called 144.1, and it's really, gives a guide and principles of how we engage meaningfully with tribes and tribal entities, Alaska Native villages and corporations, and our commitment to our, trust responsibility. And in these principles and policy, I think they're, it's pretty powerful when you look at it. But our task right now is to make it stronger. And so we have held 2 tribal consultation sessions since I've been in this role. We held one earlier last year in April, and then we held one believe in March of this year. And the one in March was specifically around the bipartisan infrastructure law. So we wanted to inform tribal leaders of what's in this law in DOE, and then how get input from them on ways that we can make it, I guess, from the tribal perspective, input on and feedback on what would be helpful for them in, to be able to participate and have more or be better informed of what's coming down the way. And so this has helped shape, the way that we are operating, and it's really significant. We actually went through we did a 5.5-hour training. We created like 5 modules of trainings for DOE staff and employees, and also contractors. So, our commitment is pretty strong. And then we also signed a sacred sites MOU, and also upholding tribal treaty rights. So we've been very active in that, and making sure that we are upholding our trust responsibility, and we are still learning, and we still have a ways to go. And I think that this is just a start, and I'm really happy to be a part of this process and laying a foundation and creating a culture that understands the unique position of tribes and our relationship, that we have to understand and read their treaties. This is part of our homework that we have to do as a federal agency. is when we do that engagement, we are all coming with an understanding and learning for us so that we can help support their energy vision.
I like that. Hey, speak a little bit more, expand on that sacred sites. That's intriguing to me. What does that really mean?
So it's a memorandum of understanding between agencies through the White House Council on Native American Affairs. There is a working group within the White House Council that is every agency is provided an opportunity if they want to sign on to this MOU, and so we make commitments throughout the year on the implementation of not identifying, but just looking at how we're going to embed sacred sites before decision making on projects. And so Department of Energy signed on to this last year, and there was an announcement at the Tribal Nations Summit. And so, this is also, we can embed this into our policy on tribal consultation. And it also falls in line with NEPA and, other cultural resource, policies that, we are in NEPA that we also, respect and want to do better. And so I think it's really exciting, and it's all new for us. So I'm glad that we were able to sign on. So Secretary Granholm signed on to that.
Yeah, and how is it to work with the Secretary Granholm? I smile because I know her. I'm in Michigan, and she was our governor for 2 terms, and we got to be somewhat friends. I'm not going to say the best buddies, but I know her, and she knows me, and she was just a wonderful governor for us. So.
Oh, she's amazing. She, Secretary, has been, just the inspiration for me as a person that has been, working within the Office of Indian Energy, and seeing her and traveling with her to visit different tribes. I think the way that she is able to, maneuver through states and tribal lands is really amazing, and share the opportunities. She just brings so much great energy to the space, and really is, she's just a great person to work with. So
yeah,
I'm having fun.
Yeah, when she was here in Michigan, she would meet with the United Tribes of Michigan annually, and it was always a good time to visit with her. She's a great. I actually knew her when she's the Attorney General as well. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
she's a good lady. She's a good lady, and I've always enjoyed talking to her. Hey, let's talk a little bit about how. Speaking of states, how can tribal leaders, beyond the infrastructure money dedicated to Indian country, how can tribes engage or access state and local funds? And talk a little bit about that, because some officials may not know that beyond the dedicated money, there may be other monies available.
Absolutely. And within the Department of Energy, there are provisions that are focused on states and the need for states to do engagement and outreach to tribes. So I think, many of these opportunities, we are encouraging collaboration and coordination. And through our listening session or our tribal consultation on the bipartisan infrastructure law this spring, there was great input from tribes around, the need to, one is to also recognize that tribes are sovereign nations, and just like states, and in a situation where funding is dedicated towards states, how can that be same apply to tribal nations? And I think those are the pieces that we are also looking at. And I think every state is different, and every relationship between tribes and states different. And I think, a lot of the bipartisan infrastructure law is encouraging collaboration between states, tribes, local communities. And so, happy to share more information on the provisions that encourage that collaboration. But I do think for Indian country, just going back to the energy access topic. I mean, I recently traveled with Tom O'Halloran in the region where Navajo and Hopi, that, you have tons of homes that don't have access to electricity, and he's advocating for these communities. And I think that he demonstrates like the understanding the needs and the basic infrastructure that, sort of lacking. And he's voicing, these concerns and, getting it on the agenda, in Congress. And I think those type of leaders are really important to continue those relationships with congressional leaders, because tribes, because ultimately they are the ones that have the platform that pushed for all of these provisions within the bipartisan infrastructure law. So everything that's in there is pretty much, guided by Congress. So I think that relationship is really important with tribal leaders and states.
Yes, and I know that Indian country appreciates the $13 billion, but certainly in the long, as you talk about broadband, sometimes it seems like that money's never quite enough, even with the allocation or appropriation. And so it's good, strong tribal leaders, and certainly we at Native News Online want to amplify the great needs that exist in the Indian country to get it out. In some cases, as we mentioned, the third world living conditions. Mm-hmm. How do tribal leaders ensure that when they're dealing with energy, that they're protecting the environment along the way, so that the tribal lands are protected for future generations?
Oh, yes. I think if anything, we have learned in Indian country sort of ground zero of how projects, since the early 40s or 50s or before then, practices of, mining and project deployment, is a lot different than I think today, and the sensitivities around climate change and impacts to local groundwater use or air sheds or land, and then also just the land status of tribes and all of those. I think we've learned for half a century how and have contributed. Tribal resources, natural resources have contributed to the foundation of the powering of the United States. So that's something that I think is really important to recognize, is that tribes have learned how to be producers of power for a lot of the United States. And I think there's enough knowledge there to understand, and learning to understand how to plan for the future. As you said, I love the concept of 7th generation planning, and this is something we're incorporating into our work, so that we're able to offer strategic energy planning for tribal nations, so that they can go through a process with communities that, in their communities, with the, multi-generational aspect of what will it look like 50 to 100 years from now? How do we envision our communities? And I think that 100-year vision is so important, because you get out of now and you're really thinking about, our future generations, and given also with climate change, how are we going to make sure that we sustain something good for our communities? So yeah, we're excited about helping to facilitate that. And I've seen it recently be demonstrated, and it's really powerful when you're able to pull together your community and do this planning.
Yes, very, very powerful. And I love what you were saying. As we say, prepare for the next 7 generations. It's our responsibility. So. Mm-hmm. Well, hey, do you have any other last comments you want to make?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of comments.
Get you off guard a little bit, but we enjoy it. We'll have to have you come back. So
yes, I'll come back. But I do want to make sure tribal leaders know that we just put out a notice of intent. And if you go to our website, we have one funding opportunity that's focused on the unelectrified, homes, buildings. And then also the other one is for energy infrastructure. So sort of our annual appropriations that we have, we're going to be we got an increase in our budget, which is huge for our office. And we're continuing to also be wanting to hire more people. So please stay tuned. And we have the Clean Energy Corps that you can also go to DOE website if you are interested in working for DOE. I'm really, stressing that we, there's more Native American applicants, and but yeah, there's a lot of exciting news every day coming out of DOE. So I'm just really proud to be a part of this team.
Yes. Well, thank you again for joining us today. And to our viewers, I want to thank you for tuning in, and tell your friends if they haven't seen it live today, they can see it on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube channels. And be joined tomorrow. We're actually going to have a special edition of Native Bidaské at 10 a.m. It's going to be an interview with Jesse Shortbow, the director of Lakota Nation versus United States, and it's a new film that's being released about the Black Hills. So I think that would be of high interest to a lot of our viewers. So again, thank you very much, Chimigwich, and thank you, Wahleah. We hope to have you back soon. Everyone have a great day.